This is an ABC News special, The 92 Vote. Tonight, live from St. Louis, Missouri, the first presidential debate. Now reporting from the ABC News World Headquarters, Peter Jennings.
Good evening and welcome to our coverage of the first debate. That is the field house at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, where George Bush and Bill Clinton and Ross Perot, already on the stage, know they have their work cut out for them. And when it's over, we'll hear what some of the voters' impressions are before the so-called spin doctors get to them. And it wouldn't be a televised debate if we didn't have various ABC News colleagues in place ready with their opinions. We've never had a three-way presidential debate before, and the negotiations have included such mundane matters, mundane at least to most of us, as to whether the candidates can take notes on a certain kind of paper. That's Mrs. Perot, by the way. And whether when we first see them they were already going to be on stage or would walk into the applause of their supporters. That's the final outcome of their negotiation. The candidates have had reams of advice. The pundits have had a field day telling us all how important this debate is. The moderator is going to be Jim Lehrer from McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour on PBS, and he will introduce the rest of his panelists. Here we go to St. Louis. Have a good evening.
Good evening and welcome to the first of three debates among the major candidates for President of the United States, sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. The candidates are independent candidate Ross Perot, Governor Bill Clinton, the Democratic nominee, and President George Bush, the Republican nominee. I am Jim Lehrer of the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour on PBS. I will be the moderator for this 90-minute event, which is taking place before an audience here in the athletic complex on the campus of Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri. Three journalists will be asking questions tonight. They are John Mashik of the Boston Globe, Ann Compton of ABC News, and Sandra Van Oker, a freelance journalist. We will follow a format agreed to by representatives of the Clinton and Bush campaigns. That agreement contains no restrictions on the content or subject matter of the questions. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes for a closing statement. The order of those, as well as the questioning, was determined by a drawing. The first question goes to Mr. Perot. He will have 2 minutes to answer, to be followed by rebuttals of 1 minute each from Governor Clinton and then President Bush. Gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening, Jim.
The first topic tonight is what separates each of you from the other. Mr. Perot, what do you believe tonight is the single most important separating issue of this campaign?
I think the principal issue that separates me is that 5.5 million people came together on their own and put me on the ballot. I was not put on the ballot by either of the two parties. I was not put on the ballot by any PAC money, by any foreign lobbyist money, by any special interest money. This is a movement that came from the people. This is the way the framers of the Constitution intended our government to be, a government that comes from the people. Over time, we have developed a government that comes at the people, that comes from the top down, where the people are more or less treated as objects to be programmed during the campaign with commercials and media events and fear messages and personal attacks and things of that nature. The thing that separates my candidacy and makes it unique is that this came from millions of people in 50 states all over this country who wanted a candidate that worked and belonged to nobody but them. I go into this race as their servant, and I belong to them. So this comes from the people.
Governor Clinton, 1 minute response.
The most important distinction in this campaign is that I represent real hope for change, a departure from trickle-down economics, a departure from tax and spend economics to invest and grow. But before I can do that, I must challenge the American people to change, and they must decide. Tonight I say to the President, Mr. Bush, for 12 years you've had it your way, you've had your chance, and it didn't work. It's time to change. I want to bring that change to the American people, but we must all decide first we have the courage to change for hope and a better tomorrow.
President Bush, 1 minute response, sir.
Well, I think one thing that distinguishes is experience. I think we've dramatically changed the world. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but the changes are mind-boggling for world peace. Kids go to bed at night without the same fear of nuclear war. And change for change's sake isn't enough. We saw that message in the late 70s, and we heard a lot about change, and what happened? The misery index went right through the roof. But my economic program, I think, is the kind of change we want. And the way we're going to get it done is we're going to have a brand new Congress. A lot of them are thrown out because of all the scandals. I'll sit down with them, Democrats and Republicans alike, and work for my agenda for American renewal, which represents real change. But I'd say if you had to separate out, I think it's experience at this level.
Governor Clinton, how do you respond to the president on the question? You have 2 minutes on the question of experience. He says that is what distinguishes him from the other two of you.
I believe experience counts, but it's not everything. Values, judgment, and the record that I have amassed in my state also should count for something. I've worked hard to create good jobs and to educate people. My state now ranks first in the country in job growth this year, fourth in income growth, fourth in the reduction of poverty, third in overall economic performance, according to a major news magazine. That's because we believe in investing in education and in jobs. And we have to change in this country. You know, my wife Hillary gave me a book about a year ago in which the author defined insanity as just doing the same old thing over and over again and expecting a different result. We have got to have the courage to change. Experience is important, yes. I've gotten a lot of good experience in dealing with ordinary people over the last year and a month. I've touched more people's lives and seen more heartbreak and hope, more pain and more promise than anybody else who's run for president this year. And I think the American people deserve better than they're getting. We have gone from first to 13th in the world in wages in the last 12 years since Mr. Bush and Mr. Reagan have been in. Personal income has dropped while people have worked harder in the last 4 years. There have been twice as many bankruptcies as new jobs created. We need a new approach. The same old experience is not relevant. We're living in a new world after the Cold War, and what works in this new world is not trickle down, not government for the benefit of the privileged few, not tax and spend, but a commitment to invest in American jobs and American education, controlling American health care costs, and bringing the American people together. That is what works. And you can have the right kind of experience and the wrong kind of experience. Mine is rooted in the real lives of real people, and it will bring real results if we have the courage to change.
President Bush, 1 minute to respond.
I just thought of another big difference here between me. I don't believe Mr. Perot feels this way, but I know Governor Clinton did because I want to accurately quote him. I think he said that the country is coming apart at the seams. Now, I know that the only way he can win is to make everybody believe the economy is worse than it is. But this country's not coming apart at the seams, for heaven's sakes. We're the United States of America. In spite of the economic problems, we're the most respected economy around the world. Many would trade for it. We've been caught up in a global slowdown. We can do much, much better. But we ought not to try to convince the American people that America is a country that's coming apart at the seams. I would hate to be running for president and think that the only way I could win would be to convince everybody how horrible things are. Yes, there are big problems, and yes, people are hurting, but I believe that this agenda for American renewal that I have is the answer to do it, and I believe we can get it done now, whereas we didn't in the past, because you're going to have a whole brand new bunch of people in the Congress that are going to have to listen to the same American people I'm listening to.
Mr. Perot, a minute response, sir.
Well, they've got a point. I don't have any experience in running up a $4 trillion debt. I don't have any experience in gridlock government where nobody takes responsibility for anything and everybody blames everybody else. I don't have any experience in creating the worst public school system in the industrialized world, the most violent, crime-ridden society in the industrialized world, but I do have a lot of experience in getting things done. So if we're at a point in history where we want to stop talking about it and do it, I've got a lot of experience in figuring out how to solve problems, making the solutions work, and then moving on to the next one.